So actually, Shelley, I always find that authors know who they are and would quite capable of introducing some themselves. So please.
Oh, okay. Yep. Kia ora. I'm Shelley. Ko Taranaki te maunga, ko Uranui te awa, ko Ngāti Mutunga te iwi. Also, ko Ngāti Rārua te iwi. And I've just found out, but I don't know exactly the links, ko Te Atiawa te iwi. So I'm a work in progress as far as learning my identity and my Māori whakapapa. And my mum was Samoan. I live in Takapau and I am married to Bernie and I have a 16 soon to be year old 17-year-old son.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
And just tell us a little bit about your writing career. And I know about your writing chops. I want to see how much you're going to spill.
Okay. Right. When I was in fifth form, which is like year 11, so how many years ago is that? I'm 54 soon, so that would be almost like 30 years ago. Maybe not quite. But I had a teacher called Mrs. Ballantyne. Now, some viewers might know Pam Ballantyne, and Jeremy Ballantyne used to be the principal of the local CHB college. So Mrs. Ballantyne was my English teacher, and we had to write little, you'd call them kind of like flash fiction these days, I think, but they were just little stories for the then Hawke's Bay Today, which was the Herald Tribune. And I won a competition. So that was back in the fifth form. And I was like, it was about hair dye. I wrote it kind of like with a metaphor that the woman was washing her hair and she was saying it was a battleground and that she had to get rid of all the, the enemies, and then there were soldiers popping up and stuff like that. But it was about dyeing her hair. So that's kind of like one of the first times that I actually wrote something and it won something, and I was like, holy moly, maybe that's what, I don't know, maybe that's what, well, I knew I loved it.
Yeah, and this was a thing that you could do.
Yeah, this was a thing I could do. I mean, I was a girl, so school's kind of made for girls a bit. That's, I think sometimes that schools kind of cater towards girls, so I sort of fitted into school pretty well. Sit up straight, and I could do that fairly easily.
Schools cater for good girls.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Schools cater for good girls. Yeah, so that was kind of yeah. I mean, if you want to start right back then, and even younger, I was writing stories, just little fable-y, fantasy little ditties.
Yeah. And then what year did you write that short story that was a finalist in the Commonwealth Prize, which was the only New Zealand story that year to be a finalist in the Commonwealth Prize, wasn't it?
Yeah. So that was 2022. So that's 3 years ago now. And in between times, I went to uni and I did lots of different things, but all along the way I was always writing, but I was sort of working in jobs. You know this, Lou, when you're working in jobs and you're doing it for your passion or whatever. Like I was always in people helping jobs, and social services and things like that. So somehow from about 2016, I started getting back into the writing, and I sent some stories away. And in 2022, do you know what? I didn't even realize I got the email like 3 weeks, and then I sort of looked and I was like, oh, what's this again? The Commonwealth Prize. And I opened it up and it was like, oh, wow, yeah, that's a big thing. So that was 2022. And I was really proud of that story because it was about, language trauma, losing, being Māori, and I don't really, even to this day, I'm not fluent at all in te reo. And that sort of shame around it, because everyone looks at you and they're like, you're brown, and they think that you know what, you know, how to speak Maori or Samoan or whatever. But when you're born in New Zealand, and, you know, my mum was Samoan and my dad was Maori, but to look at, he was, looked, you know, Pākehā. And so the families back then, they just wanted everyone to be, all their kids and everything to be, well, assimilated is probably the word, but, you know, to get on in society. So I never learned it. And so that story was really about the sort of shame of not knowing how to speak your own language. So that's where, like, my kids' stories now are like this. I love them so much because it's like I can use a bit of te reo and I can learn myself some of the words and feel kind of like if there's a little kid out there like me who was, you know, who's never known how to say a word, never known what a kikino is, or, you know, which is a fur seal, or a kahu, which is a hawk, then those little words can be added in to a cool, fun story. Well, I hope they're cool and fun.
I think they're cool and fun. Yes.
Thank you.
Very, very, very shortly. So you're still, because that's where I sort of met you, through your amazing poetry and your amazing short story writing, and you're still being published on Newsroom and in journals, presumably, and all over the place. So those are very much for grown-ups. They're very sophisticated, and not that your children's books are not sophisticated, but how did you then think, I'm going to write for children, with Brave Kahu first and then with Kimmy, the Kicking Or Now?
Yeah, well, I think with the publishing world, yeah, thank you. Isn't it beautiful? Matt Tate.
Yes.
Yeah, Matt Tate did both of those covers, and I think it's just stunning.
They look good.
Yeah. But I think it's a little bit like the publishing world is a little bit slow. So actually, back in 2019, I was very fortunate to be accepted to the Masters of Creative Writing up at the University of Auckland. So that was about 2019. And then COVID struck. And then so we had to, you know, stop halfway through and all that sort of stuff because it carried on into 2020. And so I was writing Brave Kahu then, but it took me longer to kind of get it to, you know, how, well, you would know this now, Lou. Books take lots of drafts.
Lots and lots.
Lots and lots and lots of editing and all that sort of stuff. So back then, I had actually started writing children's books first. And then COVID came, and so I was at home and doing all, you know, and so my children's manuscript was kind of in the background, getting sort of just sitting there, settling there, and then having other eyes on it. And then I started writing more grown-up sort of essays and short stories and things like that. So the children's book was actually the first thing. I've always wanted to write for children. Well, have I always wanted to write for children? I've always loved kids' books. Like, I don't know who said it, but somebody said, like, there's actually no, you know, you can't actually say that something's a kid's book in some ways. Like, adults also love children's stories, or, you know. So yeah, it just happened that my first children's book took a while to go through the process, and I have to thank people like the New Zealand Society of Authors with Cassie Hart. She did an assessment for me of that manuscript, and then we did a lot of work on it and things like that. So it just took a little while, and in between I was doing this adult grown up sort of essays and short stories. So that's kind of how it happened.
So do you have like many ideas floating around your head the whole time?
Yeah.
What's it like in there?
Well, I think like anybody, doesn't matter who it is, whether it's a little 5-year-old in a primary school class, you've always, who has to draw a picture or write something. There's always going to be something that they see or you hear about, or and you kind of, it's a bit like Play-Doh, you transform it into your imagination, then all of a sudden spaghetti, you've got something that comes out. So there's always things floating around. Like I'm supposed to be writing this other grown-up novel, and I've just literally had an idea for a YA novel, which I love, and I've just started writing, and I've written like 3 chapters in 2 days.
Yeah.
So it's like that.
So how did Kahu and the characters in Brave Kahu and the Porangi Magpie, how did they come to you?
So literally one day I saw a kahu being attacked by about 3 or 4 magpies, and this was in Hawke's Bay. I can't remember, it might have been up by Pika Pika Swamp, actually, somewhere up there. And I was like, oh, I thought that swamp harriers, the kahu, being a predator and that they wouldn't really have any enemies. And so except man, of course, except human beings, sorry. Yeah, so I did a little bit of research, and so literally like the story formed, and at first I was going to do like this real epic Tolkien type of story where you had armies of sparrows and tui and the whole shebang, like this huge big epic thing. And the other thing I did when I was researching it, I came across this old ornithological, is that the word, ornithology, the study of birds, ornithological, this old New Zealand ornithological magazine, and it had a story about a swamp harrier hawk that had a broken wing or something like that, and it was surviving on the ground, and its mate was bringing it food. And also there were other stories about kahu surviving on the ground with no feet, or not surviving on the ground, but surviving with no talons.
Yeah.
So they'd gotten caught up in wire or whatever it is, and they would survive for years. So when I first started writing it, and a few people said, oh no, if a bird was on the ground, they would just die. Like there's no story there. And I was like, well, I beg to differ. I found some evidence that actually a bird could survive on the ground for, a week or more, weeks actually, if they're being cared for by their other, their mates or their friends or whatever. So that's how that sort of story sort of came about. And it was always going to be 2 sisters and a little brother, and that kind of relationship where your sisters are kind of pecking at each other a bit, but they really do love each other. And the little brother, they love the brother, but it's like, oh god, I have to babysit my little brother, that sort of thing. The whole family dynamics came into that. And because it was set in New Zealand and I really wanted weka in there, I set it down in the South Island because there's more weka down there. There are a few in the North Island, but not as many.
Okay, I didn't know that about weka. Yeah, so it did become a bit of it is an epic quest, isn't it? And it's also an epic quest, with Kimmy, because the big adventure is more than one big adventure, really. It begins with Kimmy worrying about his mum, but having to go on this grand quest to find out what his dream is, at the stone circle there, and with Hine. And just tell us a little bit about the plot. I've probably done it now myself, but you tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, I was going to read a little bit at the back, but really it's 2 boy kekino's, and Kimmy's mum gets hurt by a shark. And so he's supposed to go on the migration up to the stone circle to get his henna moon blessings, which is their coming of age ceremony. And he's really excited about it. But when his mum gets hurt, he has to stay behind. And his friend Rata, who has big flippers and is a bit of a gorm, bit of an egghead mate, but sweet. He stays behind with him. So then they finally get to go when Mama gets a bit better and can look after herself and her new pup. And then they take off, and they've got to learn how to, hunt in the big wide moana and keep away from sharks. And they end up having quite a bit of fun. And they meet two other kekino, who are two girl kekinos, who are quite sassy and kind of try and tell them what to do a little bit, but they all are good mates, and they just have a big adventure up the east coast of the Lower Island. Yeah.
So it does feel,
and they meet a lot of mates, a lot of different sort of sea creatures on the way. And it's interesting because I'll shout out to Room 4 at St. Bernadette's School at Christchurch. They did a big project on Brave Kahu last year and sent me a whole lot of letters. And so I sent them some first words of Kimi the Kekino, and they gave me lots of little tips that I could include. So they were amazing, actually, Room 4. So thank you. And thanks, Jess.
Well done, Room 4. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a giant squid in there. Some epic kind of sea creatures who've made the cut.
Yes, and the very, very scary hammerhead shark, who's only just trying to find a place to raise her babies, but she's kind of encroached upon their turf. The creating character, like I could absolutely hear Rata so clearly in my head. And there's this little bit here where when we get to the stone circle and Hina hails down from the sky, will she bless us and help make our dreams come true? This is a very exciting Kimmy. Rata turned up his whiskers and shrugged. Dunno, hope so. It's just great. He's like, yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm just coming along for the ride.
Yeah, you can almost hear him chewing something, eh? He's just like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but the lovely mates, absolutely. And let's talk about research for a minute, because we're chewing through our time. Because the seals are so sealish, which is a bit of a silly thing to say, but you do describe how they do the sort of head turn thing. And did you sit and watch seals for hours and hours?
I did watch seals. I did watch Kekino. Maybe not for hours and hours, but yeah. And they do the flick, and they flick their head right back, and I just thought, I wonder if they're trying to impress their papa seals or the other seals, and doing all these moves. And I really loved writing the kekino in the water, and you can just feel like it's a silky smooth and the difference between in the water and on land. And I love water myself. Like, I love just the weightlessness of being in, not so much the sea, like I'm a little bit like antsy in the sea. I like the little shallow waves and stuff. Pardon?
It's a busy place. I've read your book. There's a lot going on in there.
Yeah. And so I did ring Doc and talk to them about what kekino eat, and that they do actually, I don't know if migrate's the right word, but it's they swim up to certain points, and they actually go a lot further than you think they would go. Yeah. Both in in like a long way, and also deeper. They go quite deep in the sea. So yeah, as you know, research, a lot of the kids out there know heaps about things, and so you want to give them some new information or the right information, and not, I don't like dumbing kids down. I like writing a story that is going to hopefully keep their interest and
So how do you get the right level of danger in there?
Well, that's really interesting because I think like say Brave Kahu has quite, like the villain is really villainy. Two is quite a villain and is quite ruthless and things like that. Where Kimi the Kekino, is there even a villain? There's somebody who's a bit dangerous. But I think, you've got to give it a bit justice. You have to give the wild nature some justice. And so I think the balance hopefully is there for the two different books. I hope the balance is there. Like my friend has been reading this one to Brave Kahu to her Moko, her grandson, who's 6. And I'm so happy because she's like, he's just spellbound. He goes, Nana, I want to see the map in the front. And he's like, there's the hunting grounds. And he's like 6 and he loves it. And he's just hanging on every word. And so I'm really proud of that. And so this one too, I think is really cool to be read aloud to younger kids, and then the older ones, from say even 8 through to good readers at 8, but 10 to 12. This has still got relationship and it's got a villain, but it's not so much about the conflict between the villain and the protagonist, and Kimi. It's more about him, seeking just really to be himself and things like that, and with his mates along the way. So it's not really the villainy. I don't even know if that answers your question, does it?
No, I think it does. And that's something that I really appreciate about your books in particular, because children are resilient and they become resilient by reading about dangerous things so that they know when they meet them in real life, even if they're not a seal in the sea, that they can cope with it and that there are ways to problem solve. So I like children's books with danger in it and grief. And, so was that quite deliberate in the 2 books that there was the threat of death as well?
Yeah, it was actually, because that's life, especially in the wild. Like, I don't think I could really talk about, and I know it's fantasy, I know it's anthropomorphized animals, but I don't think I could have written anything about, wild creatures without some real situations that, that's what they experience on the daily. I think is the threat of death, whether it's from other animals or whether it's from actually human beings, which is unfortunate. So so I wanted to also put some themes of the environment and how we can look after the environment, or how we should look after the environment without making it a big message in there, which is, do you know what I'm saying? It's like,
and there's a question that's popped up that is very relevant actually. Is the sea a character?
Is the sea a character? I've never really thought about it like that, but I think it should be. I never made it like that, but I think it does live, and the sea life is, so I'm not quite sure about that, but I love that actually. I love that. And that's actually made me think about maybe a different story. Another story in the future where the sea is definitely a character. Thank you.
Nice work, whoever asked that question. Thank you. So was there sort of research that didn't make it in there?
Ooh, I can't recall. Probably because, well, having said that, I wrote this really, really quickly, like in about 3 weeks, and then it had different draft iterations after that. But the main brain dump came in 3 weeks. And so I think, I'm not quite sure whether there was much research that didn't make it in there, because it sort of came all fully formed. And I think it all came together. And I hadn't brought this up, but this little kekino
Look at him.
is a ceramic that my auntie gave me years and years and years and years ago. My auntie turns 90 this week. So happy birthday, Auntie Ray, at the end of the week. She lives in Hastings, and she gave this to me and my son years and years ago. So why I bring this up is lots of little things came together to form the story, and this was part of it. Like, seals hadn't really been in my sphere of influence or my consciousness and I sort of, a few things happened. I read that story about the seal who broke into the marine biologist's house through the cat flap up in Mount Maunganui.
I wondered if that was true.
Yeah, it's true. Google it. Up at Mount Maunganui, and then I saw this, and then we were down in Cape Palliser at the lighthouse, and I was down the bottom because I'd hurt my knee and I couldn't walk up the steps, and so I had to wait down there for my son and my husband. And then there were these kekino all around that was so gorgeous and reminded me of dogs. But of course you don't approach them, they're big, they're sort of lumbering around. So why I say that is because everything sort of came together. There was little bits of research in this, but not huge like tomes of it that I couldn't kind of fit in there.
Yeah, fair enough too.
If that just makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. So we're just about at the end of our half an hour. Just goes like that, doesn't it?
Holy moly.
So I know you've got the YA one fizzing away in your head, and you've got an adult novel fizzing away in your head. A question just popped up there. What animal next? So we've had the kahoo and all the birds, the forest birds, and then the kekino.
Well, I do actually have a pretty good idea for I know I've done the birds, but this just won't leave my head. And so it's a pukeko and a heti or a hedgehog. And there's another pukeko mate, and they get lost because they hop aboard a train, and then they've got to find their way back home. So that's kind of what's in my head. If I'm allowed to do, or if I'm, that's in there. And the pukeko's name's Archie. So
of course. How about the heti?
The heti is called, I think, Hetty. I think I'm going to call her Hetty.
Why wouldn't you?
So yeah, that's another little sort of middle grade one. But I've also got one where it's got two people, actual people, cousins. So I've already written that one. That's already finished.
And is that coming out anytime soon?
I'm not sure about that. If it is, it'll be next year sometime. But if anyone has any an animal they want to see, like a New Zealand animal they want to see, written about in a cool way. I was thinking like a dog and how there's lots of dog and cat stories and things like that. But yeah, I've been thinking about a dog. I don't
have too many dog stories, so you go ahead. Please.
Yeah, totally. And there'll be, it all. I know we talked about having villains and all that sort of stuff, but I also love a good ending. I have to have a nice, beautiful. So for those people who want intrigue or like a death at the end, it doesn't happen with me, especially for kids' stories. I have to have a good ending for a kid's story. So if it's got a dog in it, there's not going to be any dogs dying or anything like that. It's just not going to happen.
Very good to know. So you've got the official launch of Kimmy coming up soon, and you're at Central Hawke's Bay Between the Lines Festival. Just briefly tell us about that before we have to wrap up.
I am. I just heard from Simon Burt today, who wrote Route 52, and Charity, of course, who's amazing. Charity Norman's going to be there, and Nawhanua Purcell. She's amazing. So I'm really excited because it's a kind of feature of local authors. And then I'm going to launch Kimmy properly there and hopefully I'll have some cool things for kids to come and do, and they can meet a local author, me. And so that's really important to me, that local kids can come and see a person who's actually written a book in their own home, region, town, and go, well, if she can do it, then I can. So if you know, all your listeners out there, you can write a book too. Anybody can write a book, and I'm more than happy to answer questions about that side of things as well.
So that'll be Sunday the 25th of May at the Waipawa Museum?
Yes, at the Waipawa Museum, around about sort of 12-ish.
Yeah, 12 noon. Great. Well, I'll be there. And hopefully
Thanks, Lou.
Lots of other people there with us too. So thank you so much, Shelley. That's been a wonderful kōrero. Always good to talk writing with you, and all the best for Kimi as we launch.
Thanks so much, Lou. And also, I've been reading this. I finished it. I love it so much. It's so much fun. Bookshop Detectives.
Thank you.
I love it. Thank you.
See you, everybody.